The last story I want to tell you is my all-time favorite story. It's a story that I tell every time I teach. I've told it in High Desert Prison. I've told it in the Florence McClure Correctional Center. I've told it to the folks from Casa Grande. I've told it to young adults aging out of the foster care system. I've told it to socioeconomically disadvantaged youth. I've told it to disabled veterans. I've told it to people in the Clark County Detention Center in this little facility. I've told it to all the youth I work with here at Central Christian. And I'm really looking forward to telling it to all of you. It really is my favorite story. It starts out with a young man named Orville Douglas Ward. We have Piper come up and stand and take his spot on stage. Yep, come right up here, stand right here. Show him your sign. Piper gets to be Orville because she inherited many of Orville's fantastic good looks. She's in fact a very handsome young lady and looks quite a bit like her grandpa Doug. Hopefully you won't get his nose. And also because she's about as out at the right age. When Orville was 13, and he was thinking about the things most 13-year-old kids thought about in small town Wisconsin, back in 1943, because of course he was born in 1930. He was thinking about hunting and fishing, and he had his own horse and his own rifle. He went sledding with his mom, and his mom had a sledding accident. She came down the hill, didn't stop in time, went underneath the fence, and the cross post on that fence took the top part of her head off, essentially scalped her. And so they kind of flapped that back on, and they took her to the local, probably the local grocery store for all I know, because there wasn't a hospital or anything like that nearby them. And they did their best to stitch it up. But from that point forward, she had horrible convulsions. She had really bad like epileptic convulsions that were products that injured me. And they went to the church that they'd been members of their whole life, and they had given to and supported with the expectation that the church would wrap their arms around her. But these were different times. This was 1943. They decided, based on those convulsions, that Orville's mom, that she had been demon-possessed. And so they cast her out of the church. They didn't get any support from the church at that time. And so Orville's dad, who was a great guy, and was engaged in the family, he ran a logging camp. He owned and operated a logging camp. So he was a good guy, but he just necessarily wasn't there. He lived and functioned primarily at that logging camp, 50 or 60 miles away. And Orville had a sister who was in town who could come in and care for Orville's mom, but Orville really was just a burden on the family at that time. And the injury really changed his mom's personality and made her kind of a mean lady. And so at 13, what Orville did was he decided to move out. He got a job at the local laundromat. The guy who owned and operated the laundromat let him stay above the laundromat, and so he did what he did. And by the way, when I tell this to my students, they don't know the ending. They don't know who Orville is. This is just some guy named Orville when I'm telling them that, so try to be surprised. He went to work. He finished high school largely because he played sports. So he played basketball, baseball, and football. That's what kept him in high school. He had lousy grades, but he kept through it for the sports. He tried going to college for a year, but he just didn't have the skills. He didn't have the resources. He didn't know. He didn't have what it took to succeed at an academic level, so he dropped out. He spent a good portion of his life looking at the world of education from the outside with a lot of longing in his heart. He joined the Navy. He fought in the Korean War. And when he came home from the Korean War, he met a woman named Ruth. Who's Ruth? Come on up. So there is some question as to whether Orville fell in love with Ruth or to whether Orville fell in love with Ruth's whole family. Because what he found there was a mother and father who were both at home, who both loved Jesus. The father was a teacher. So during the times of the Great Depression, they lived in Santa Barbara, California. During the times of the Great Depression, when all the Okies were headed west, and most of the people in California hated the Okies and would beat on them and would be horrible to them, they had a home, they had a steady income. They would welcome these people into their home. They would give them showers and food and clothes and let them stay there for a day or two until they were back on their feet. So by the time Orville had met and married Ruth, he had learned about education and the value of educators. He had learned about Jesus and how deeply impactful that was and how it changed not the way people thought, but also the way that people lived their lives. And he had learned about the value of community. And he had decided that he was going to live those things out. And he was going to live those things out also through his children. So they had a daughter. Her name was Kathy. Who's Kathy? Come on. You can start to fill this area down here. Kathy was a phenomenal daughter. Everything a set of parents could ask for. She was wonderful, loving, caring, graceful, humble. She married a guy named Bert, who was a union electrician. He doesn't really fit this story, so nobody has a Bert card. We're just going to kind of leave Bert out for him. Kathy grew up to be an administrator, receptionist in high school. You guys watch MASH? Right, and there's Radar O'Reilly in MASH. Radar O'Reilly is kind of the one who makes MASH run. So that's kind of what Kathy does at the high school she works for. She's kind of that person that everyone comes to for emotional support, who knows what's going on to make sure that things rock and roll and things go. They also had a daughter named Patty. Come on up, Patty. Patty was also a fantastic daughter. Why don't you sit up here? Patty was also a fantastic daughter. Between the two of them, they were up with people. They were crazy Jesus freaks. They would go to Young Life camps, and they would lead young folks, and they loved it, and they lived it out in a huge way. Patty grew up to be a high school principal, and they both got married. We already talked about who Kathy got married to, but Patty got married to a gentleman named Dan Fleming. Who's Dan Fleming? Come on up, Dan Fleming. Right? So, we've got someone who's working in the high school making things run. We've got a high school principal, and we've got a pastor. Right? And then they started having kids. And the first kid out of the bunch was Robert Pennock. Who's got Robert Pennock? Come on up. Stand by Kathy over there. So Robert grew up, and Robert served his community. He became a police officer. And then we had Nathan. Who's got Nathan? Come on up, Nathan. Stand here with the Flemings. Nathan grew up, and Nathan, oddly enough, became a teacher, doing credit retrieval in the high school, and also the coach of the baseball team. And then we had, I think after that, we had Susan. Who's got Susan? Come on up, Susan. You're on the pen outside over there. Susan grew up. You want to guess what Susan was? Susan was a teacher and a ministry partner. Okay. Oh, I kind of skipped ahead. I forgot to tell you about Orville. Orville ended up going back to school, getting a bachelor's degree in psychology from Lewis and Clark, getting a master's degree in counseling psychology from Marylandhurst. He spent his time as a corporate trainer and as a counselor, helping tons and tons and tons of people. All right, so we got Robert, we got Susan, we got Nathan. So now we need Colleen. Come on, Colleen. Anybody want to guess what Colleen grew up to be?
Teacher.
Yeah, oddly enough, Colleen grew up to be a teacher. You can stand right here. She grew up to be a teacher and also the volleyball and basketball coach. She helped people learn how to read. She helped adults learn how to read. She helped people learn how to do algebra. And then we had Benjamin. Come on up, Benjamin. Benjamin's on this side. Benjamin did not grow up to be a teacher. Benjamin grew up to be a pastor. You guys starting to get the gist of things going on here? So what else we got left? We got Brad. Come on up, Brad. Brad married Colleen. Brad is a builder of custom homes and also a pastor. We've got, who else have we got? Who are you? Beth. Come on up, Beth. Beth married Nathan. Beth turned out to be, oddly enough, a teacher. Weirdly so. Rebecca. Come on up. Rebecca married Ben. And Rebecca is a nurse, strangely enough. So we have Orville doing all this fantastic stuff. We've got Orville's 2 daughters and their husbands and their kids doing all this stuff. And then they had to try for one more. They had a son. Son didn't work out so well initially. Right? He was the one who was trouble. He was the one who was drinking and doing drugs and doing everything wrong and wrecking cars. And he was seriously in trouble for a period of time. But then he also grew up. He married a fantastic woman. So why don't we have Dan and Elisa both go? My son Eli there, part of Dan. Dan grew up to be a corporate trainer and is working on becoming a pastor. And he married Elisa, who, oddly enough, is a teacher. So if you stop and you think about all the people that Orville touched during the course of his life, all the people that he counseled, all the people that he trained, all the families that those people impacted, And the people in the lives of those families that they impacted, we're talking about literally thousands of people. And then if you stop and you look, all the rest of you are left in the audience. And all the people up here who are all teachers and ministry partners and pastors and nurses and police officers. I don't have a specific number for you, but I invite you to consider just how many people, how many lives this group of people has impacted. What you have there, folks, is Orville Douglas Ward and his legacy. And when I say that it lives on in me, that is a radical and vast understatement. It lives on in all of these people, in all of these people, all the people of these people. You guys want to take a seat? Thank you very much.